Hi guys, hello, welcome to my channel. I'm super excited for today's video because as you can see from this big old stack of books next to me, we're gonna be doing a book haul today. Pretty much all of the books that I have to show you today are mostly from Amazon, but we do have a few from Blackwell's, which I'm gonna go ahead and go through first. But also I have this really cool special book to show you as well, which we will go through very soon. But again, I do want to do the Blackwell's ones first. So let's set this aside for a couple of minutes and let's go through these two packages right here. I did order 3 books total from Blackwell's and I'm really hoping that 2 of them are in here. It feels like there might be. Hopefully there is. If not, we still have a book coming. Let's go through our first one, and I'm pretty sure I already know which one this is. 2 of the books that I got from Blackwell's were like new release pre-orders from like June releases, so, and this is one of them. I'm so excited. So this one I specifically got from Blackwell's because I preferred the UK cover to the US cover. And this first book is, oh my god, she's so cute. So this is The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. And like I said, I did order it from the UK because I definitely prefer this hardcover to the US one. Here's what the US one looks like. And this one's fine, but I just really prefer this one. I feel like this one has more character, if that makes sense, even though it's more plain. Welcome to the manor, the party's on fire. And there's a couple of quotes that say, an atmospheric, tantalizing thriller, an Agatha Christie for the age, and I was turning the pages way past midnight. This is essentially one of my favorite types of thrillers slash like murder mysteries. I love like a whodunit where everyone is kind of stuck in one location. And this is what that is. In the shadows of an ancient wood, guests gather for the opening weekend of The Manor, a beautiful new countryside retreat. But under the burning midsummer sun, darkness stirs. Old friends and enemies circulate among the guests, and the candles have barely been lit for a solstice supper when the body is found. It all began with a secret 15 years ago, and now the past has crashed the party, and it'll end in murder at the Midnight Feast. And it also has really cool end papers as well. Does the actual hardcover have anything? The hardcover, you guys. The hardcover. Is this not so cool? It's black, obviously, with orange flames, like the flame from the front. And then it also has the author's signature, and it says collector's edition. I'm speechless. Now let's go ahead and get into our second box from Blackwell's. Ooh, that was a nice good one. And there is 2 books. This is Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I've read 2 other Ali Hazelwood books. The Love Hypothesis, which I absolutely adored, and then Bride, which is her very first and only so far paranormal romance, and I absolutely loved that. So I am very excited to read more from this author. And this one in particular I'm really excited for because it has a very similar kind of concept to one of my favorite like classic iconic 90s rom-coms, which is You've Got Mail. That one is essentially about like an independent bookstore owner being kind of like taken over by a large book corporation, and there's like a romance between the two. It's a super cute movie, highly recommend. And like I said, this book has a very similar kind of concept to it. But of course it is Ali Hazelwood, and all of her books are kind of like women in STEM kind of related. And it says that she is a biotech engineer at this company that is getting like hostilely taken over by another company. And then it says, torn between loyalty and an undeniable attraction, Rue and Eli throw caution out of the lab and the boardroom windows. Their affair is secret, no strings attached, and has a built-in deadline. The day one of their companies will prevail. So I'm super excited about this. And then also too, just like the cover of this is super adorable. And now let's go ahead and grab our last book out of this box, which is something I'm very excited for. Another book that I pre-ordered. So actually this whole order was basically pre-order books. This is Gold, which is the 5th and I think final book, correct me if I'm wrong, from the Plated Prisoner series. I've talked about the series so many times. I have not read it yet, but I've had it on my shelves for like a year and a half. Like I literally purchased the first 4 books in this series in my very first book haul on this channel. So I've had them for a very long time and I cannot wait to get to them, but I wanted to wait until I had all of the books physically in hand. So we're finally doing it. This one is basically a King Midas retelling, I think, which honestly I don't really know his story, so I'm probably gonna look that up before I read this series just to kind of, actually I think King Midas, isn't he the one that like everything he touches turns to gold? I think that's it. And it would totally make sense because this book is literally called Gold, and gold is definitely a theming throughout the entire series, like cover art, and it is Plated Prisoner. So yeah, I think that's him. Anyway, it's a retelling of King Midas, and it is like a spicy series, which I'm obsessed with. I love spicy, smutty books. So those are all the books that I got from Blackwell's. Now let's go ahead and move on to our super special ginormous book. This book was actually sent to me by the publishing company Hungry Minds, who are also the creators of this book, which is funny enough called The Book. And I'm obviously going to show you the book in a second, but I wanted to quickly give this packaging a moment because my goodness, it is so cute. Basically, like I said, the publishing company for the book is called Hungry Minds. So we've got like a little illustration here with a bunch of little light bulbs, which is just so cute. But then also just like the opening process for this book was really cool. Obviously, I've already like opened this and looked through the book because I was too excited not to when I first got it. But the box kind of like opens up like this with little tabs. And here is our book. Also just realized it's upside down. There we go. Is this not literally not like the coolest book you have ever seen? The hardcover itself is made out of this kind of like dark blue, kind of fabric-y type of material. But then there's like a really pretty intricate like design, all in silver foiling. And I just think this is so, so pretty. But not only that, the actual like pages themselves have a really cool texture and kind of like look to them. So first of all, they're really thick, but then they also have this kind of like aged type of look to them and kind of a, not rough texture, but it's definitely a little rougher than your typical like book page, if that makes sense. So it very much gives like an antique-y kind of look. And honestly, like flipping through this book very much gives me like fantasy spell book kind of vibes. Like this is so cool. And the illustrations in here are super cool as well, which I do want to talk about more in detail. But before I do that, I want to like give you an actual like, I guess, synopsis, if you will, of the book. This is not like a storybook that you read. Again, it is called The Book, but it also says The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization. This is essentially a giant book full of everything that makes us human. Everything that we've invented, that we do to kind of live day to day, but it mostly kind of like centers around the beginning stages of everything, which I feel like is so cool. And every little bit of information is accompanied by literally the coolest illustrations. Not only are they done just like really, really well, but they also have really fun kind of like imagery aspects to them. A couple of examples just on the first couple of pages. On the first page, we have making fire, and sitting around the fire, we have some hands, and one of them has little finger puppets on it, which I think is super cute. And then there's a page on rope where there's a bunch of hands kind of making a pattern with the rope, but amongst the hands, there's also like a paw of some sort. So just like fun little stuff like that is sprinkled out throughout the entire book. And I feel like for someone like myself who was never really a big history or science person, the illustrations themselves make me want to like read the actual information in this book. And speaking of the information in the book, I want to quickly go over the table of contents to kind of give you an idea of what to expect from the book, like the actual subjects that they talk about in here. Nothing goes too in-depth about any one particular subject, but I think the book has a really cool collection of just general knowledge about a lot of different things. I mentioned earlier with like starting fire, how to find water, things like that. In that section, it's called like First Things. And then we have a section on medicine and plants and animals and food, which are all some of the ones that I'm kind of the most interested in myself. And then it kind of goes into more kind of like industry things like materials, tools, building, mechanics, optics, electricity. And then we get into things like sailing, aviation, industry, military. And then there's a fun little section called Everyday Life. And there's just information about kind of just random everyday things, which I think is also really fun. And then we kind of go into the arts with like word, art, music, games. And then there's a section called Human where there's a little bit of information about like breathing, meditation, yoga, things like that, which I also find really interesting. And then the last couple of sections are Delicatessen, which I don't actually know what that word means, but it's got sections about like sushi, fast food, soft drinks, which I think is also really interesting. And then the very last section is Society, where it talks about kind of like festivals, cities, and things like that. The whole concept of this book is just super, super cool. The book itself is literally a piece of art, and I'm very excited to one day kind of put this on a coffee table. I don't currently have a coffee table, but once I do, this will definitely be going on it for everyone that comes over to browse through. I just think this is so cool. And yeah, if you're interested in checking out this book for yourself, I will leave a link for it down in my description. And that is that. That is the book. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the rest of this stack. And literally the rest of these books are all from Amazon. So we've got quite a bit to go through. Let's go ahead and start off with this one. Here's what our books look like. I kind of hate that Amazon sends books in bags, but whatever. Every book in this bag has a particular theme. I essentially wanted to get a few billionaire, is it millionaire or billionaire romances? Anyway, I wanted to get rich people romances. And the first one I got is King of Wrath by Anna Huang. And if you're unfamiliar, wrath is one of the 7 deadly sins. And as I've talked about so many times on this channel, The Kingdom of the Wicked is one of my favorite series that I've read. And that series features the princes of hell who all embody the 7 deadly sins. So the concept of another series being at least titled with the 7 deadly sins was very intriguing to me. This one says billionaire, so it's billionaire romances. Billionaire CEO Dante Russo thrives on control, both personally and professionally. He never planned to marry until the threat of blackmail forces him into an engagement with a woman he barely knows. So this is also kind of like a forced proximity type of situation, which are also some of my favorites, especially in spicy books, which I don't know if these are spicy, but I'm pretty sure they are, especially because they are published by Bloom Books. Some of my favorite books come from Bloom, and they're all spicy, so I'm pretty sure this is a spicy series as well. But anyway, this one also says, Vivian Liu, jewelry heiress and daughter of his newest enemy, the wife he never wanted and the weakness he never saw coming. It doesn't matter how beautiful or charming she is, Dante will do everything in his power to destroy the blackmail and their betrothal. There's only one problem. Now that he has her, he can't bring himself to let her go. And then there's another part of the synopsis that has like Vivian's story, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at that. I am very excited about this. I've definitely very much been in my kind of like romance era recently. Actually, these are not all billionaire romances because we also have The House Across the Lake, which I totally forgot I bought, by Riley Sager. And this is a book that I have been meaning to read literally for the past 2 summers. I just have not done it yet. I've even gone as far as like checking it out from the library, I think 2 separate times, and I still just never got around to it for whatever reason. So this year I actually decided to purchase it so that I would kind of like force myself to read it. So I'm making a promise to myself, I will be reading it this summer. And then the last book that we had in that package is The Fine Print, so back to our billionaire romances. Literally since the second I have known about BookTube, I have also known about this series, and I've literally heard nothing but great things about it. So I'm very excited to give it a shot. This one in particular is about Rowan, who is the owner, I guess, of Dreamland, which is kind of like a Disney-esque type of theme park, as you can see from the cover. And then we have Zara, who says, after submitting a drunk proposal criticizing Dreamland's most expensive ride, I should have been fired. Instead, Rowan offered me a dream job. The catch, I had to work for the most difficult boss I'd ever met. Rowan was rude and completely off limits, but my heart didn't care. At least not until I discovered his secret. It was time to teach the billionaire that money couldn't fix everything, especially not us. I love the whole like grumpy sunshine as a trope, but I honestly don't even need the sunshine. As long as there's like a grumpy, rude dude, I'm happy. What do we have here? Ooh, okay. Speaking of romance genres that I am like so obsessed with right now, we have a cowboy slash like small town romance. This is Dust Storm by Maggie Gates, and I have not seen a single soul read or talk about this book, but I was scrolling through Amazon like actively searching for cowboy romances, and this one popped up, and I just thought the cover was really pretty. So we added to cart. Christian, rule number 1, you ride in my truck, you let me open the door. Aw. Another problem was the last thing I needed. Unfortunately, Cassandra Parker was mine. But the biggest problem of all, it wasn't the beautiful stranger sticking her nose in my operations, it wasn't the bulldozer she was driving over my way of life, and it definitely wasn't the fact that she was living in my house. My biggest problem? The engagement ring on her finger! And then we have Cassandra. Rule number 1, if you're going to kill someone, make it look like an accident, cry at the funeral, admit to nothing, and deny everything. Excuse me, what? Let's keep reading. To be clear, I didn't want to be Christian Griffith's problem, but there I was, exiled from New York, stranded on a cattle ranch, and desperate to salvage what was left of my career. Living with a single dad and his children was a downgrade from my high-rise office and city comforts, but I agreed to it for one simple reason: to save my job. A hot cowboy wasn't going to lasso me into staying a second longer than necessary. Okay, that did not explain anything about the potential murder. To say that I am intrigued about this book is an understatement. And then this book is one that I actually saw someone else get in another video. So Sarah Caroli kind of recently did a bookstore vlog, and she picked up this book, and she basically said the only reason she grabbed it was because of the cover, and that's exactly why I purchased it as well. The cover is so cool. This is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. I'm a little annoyed because this book is a little beat up. Oh, okay, we're returning this because it's fully split. Also too, just like the book itself is like warped. So we're gonna need to return this like ASAP. But anyway, I literally have absolutely zero idea about what this book is about. I just know that the cover is gorgeous. Hi guys. I had to do a little bit of a change of scenery because my camera battery died, which has been happening so often. So thankfully I had purchased like a little plug-in battery. Like it's a fake battery that you stick in your camera that goes and connects to the wall, which is seeming to work. It's working, so that's good. But the only problem is the cord is like this long. So I have to sit like right next to the wall until I can get an extension cord. So anyway, let's go ahead and continue on with the book haul. This book, again, I just basically purchased because the cover I thought was really cool. It's like red and it's got like some gold metallic elements of kind of like a mountain lion and a sun. And the rest of the books have kind of like a similar theme because this is a part of a series. And you're not gonna really be able to see like the details on the books, but they each have like their own color with their own kind of like unique metallic imagery. So I'm very excited about this book. This one is basically about Leia, I think is maybe how you pronounce the name. It's L-A-I-A. The only way that I can think to say that would be Leia, so that's what we're gonna go with for now. But basically it's about Leia, whose brother is arrested for treason, so she becomes a spy for the Empire to rescue her brother. And it says, at the military academy is where she meets Elias, the school's finest soldier, and secretly, it's most unwilling. Quote at the top says, Leia is a slave, Elias is a soldier, neither is free. So it seems like he might be a professor at the academy, but not one that wants to be. So I'm gonna be honest, the synopsis of that is not like the most intriguing synopsis in the world, but I am very excited to give this a read once I get a new edition of it that is not ripped. This is actually the most recent couple of books that I bought. I literally bought these like 2 days ago. And the first one is Darkroom Etiquette, and I am so excited for this book. This is another book that I've been wanting to read for literally years. I think it came out 2 years ago and then I never got it, so I wanted to get it last year, didn't get it then either. So this year I really wanted to get it, but then I saw over the weekend that it was on sale for like $7. So I obviously got it. 16-year-old Sawyer has everything: popularity, good looks, perfect grades, until he's kidnapped by a man who tells him the privileged life he's been living is based on a lie. Trapped in a windowless room without knowing why he's been taken or how long the man plans to keep him shut away, Sawyer faces... Oh, his name is Sawyers with an S. That's weird. Oh, Sayers. It's not even Sawyer, it's Sayers. Sayers faces a terrifying new reality. To survive, he must forget the world he once knew and play the part his abductor has created for him. But as time passes, the line between fact and fiction starts to blur, and Sayers begins to wonder if he can escape before he loses himself. I don't know what it is, but there's something really intriguing about the whole concept of that. And very excited to have gotten it for almost nothing. And then the other book that I have in that box is a book that I'm kind of like going out on a limb with a little bit. So this is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir or Ware, something like that. This is essentially a sci-fi book, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's got some guy in like space floating around, and sci-fi is not a genre that I typically gravitate toward. Literally anytime I've ever read a sci-fi book, I've enjoyed it like throughout my entire life. So I don't know why I have this like idea in my head that I don't like sci-fi. So to combat that, basically, like I said, I'm gonna try to like force myself to read more sci-fi. And this one in particular is one that I've heard a lot of really good things about recently, so I thought I would give it a shot. I think this one is about like someone that gets stranded on a planet or something and has to survive by himself. Ryland Grace is the sole survivor on a desperate last chance mission. So yeah, but then it also says, and if he fails, humanity and Earth itself will perish. Except that right now he doesn't know that. He can't even remember his own name, let alone the nature of his assignment or how to complete it. Well, that's an issue. All he knows is that he's been asleep for a very long time and he's just been awakened to find himself millions of miles from home with nothing but 2 corpses for company. His crewmates dead, his memories fuzzily returning, Ryland realizes that an impossible task now confronts him. Hurtling through space on this tiny ship, he must puzzle out an impossible scientific mystery and conquer an extinction-level threat to our species. So, he's not stuck on a planet, he's stuck in a little ship. But yeah, he apparently doesn't really remember what he's supposed to be doing. He's the sole survivor. I do actually really love reading stories about people that like have to survive. Hatchet was literally one of my favorite books as a kid. If you're not familiar, that one is basically about a like teenage boy and he's like the sole survivor in a plane crash and he has to survive in the woods until he's rescued, and I just loved it. Like I loved him kind of like trying to figure out how to like fish, building himself a shelter. Like I love that kind of concept. This one is obviously he's in a tiny spaceship, so that's not going to be, you know, he's not gonna be fishing and building shelters, but but there is that aspect of him trying to like figure things out. So I am very, very excited about this one. You can get the first little glimpse. What is that? Ooh, okay. I literally have the worst memory ever. Like, I know what books that I bought. Like, if I really sat down and thought about what books I bought, like, I would know. But while I'm filming these videos, I like forget everything. This box in particular is literally a box of wild cards. I have no idea if I'm gonna like any of these books, but they're ones that just have really been intriguing me or just recently started intriguing me, and I'm very excited for them. So the first one that we have is actually a new release. I think it was just released either this month or last month. This one is called I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. And first of all, this cover is so fun. It's basically got like some imagery of like a cubicle with someone like laying next to it. And this one actually grabbed my attention because I think it's basically about like someone that works in an office, and it used the show The Office as like an example of like kind of what to expect from this book. And The Office is literally one of my favorite shows of all time. I highly recommend that show if you have not seen it. It is fantastic. And the fact that this is even remotely compared to it, I was like, I have to buy that. This one says, as far as Jolene is concerned, her interactions with her colleagues should start and end with her official duties as an admin for Super Shops. Unfortunately, her irritating, incompetent coworkers don't seem to understand the importance of boundaries. Her secret to survival, she vents her grievances in petty email postscripts, then changes the text color to white so no one can see. That is until one of her secret messages is exposed. Her punishment, sensitivity training. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop it there. There's like a bunch more to the synopsis, but I kind of don't want to go into this with any expectations, so I don't really want to read any more about it. I had one office job in the past, but the majority of my jobs have been like retail jobs, and everyone that's ever worked in retail always has the same complaints, and I just think it's funny to hear them. So I am very excited to hear some office complaints. Next up, we have another one that could be a really fun summer read, and this is one that has literally been on my wish list for so long. Like, it was literally one of the first books that I added to my wish list on Amazon. And the only reason I purchased it was because I was going through my list and kind of deleting things that I no longer wanted. Yeah, I was just kind of auditing my list essentially. And I actually decided to kind of like start purchasing like 1 or 2 books here and there from the bottom of my list to kind of like keep it more current, because I've mentioned this several times, but the longer I let a book kind of sit, whether it be physically on my shelves or digitally on my wish list, the less likely I am to ever read it. And also too, just like digitally, I completely forget they exist. Like this book. This is Lies Like Wildfire, and is this not like the coolest freaking cover? This is by Jennifer Lynn Alvarez, and there's a quote at the top that says, 5 fiery stars for this bingeable, edge-of-your-seat, twisty thriller. This one is essentially about a group of kids that start a fire and lie about it. Basically, they were at their favorite like watering hole because it was a dry California day, and it says, but that day there was wind. We didn't mean to do it, but we did. And now one of the monsters is missing and everyone's eyes are on us. So we did what we had to do. We lied. Sometimes good people do bad things, and there's one thing people hate. It's liars. It doesn't actually mention anything about a fire, but I'm pretty sure the synopsis on Amazon said something about a fire. I didn't actually know about the missing monster, so kind of have to like add the 2 synopses together to kind of get the whole picture. So essentially, these kids started a fire, one of their friends went missing, and they've got to lie to get out of it. And then the last one in this book is one that I have been going back and forth on so much in the last few months. Like, I've added it to my cart probably a dozen times and then taken it back out at the last minute. And I actually mentioned that in a recent video, and one of you commented and basically solely convinced me to finally bite the bullet and get this book. And that book is Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. At its bare bones, I believe this is essentially a romance like smut series between humans and aliens. So I'm intrigued. I love like vampire romances. I love, you know, werewolf romances. So why not alien ones, you know? We'll see how this goes. We've only got 1 book in this box, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I have been wanting this book for the longest time. I found out about this series right as it was being like republished or just published in general. I don't know if this series started off as like an indie release or what, but for whatever reason it was out and then it wasn't. But then by the time it did come out, I found out it was part of a series. So I decided just to kind of like go ahead and wait until both of the books were out, and I did get both of them. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this box as well, because I'm pretty sure the second book is in here. There's another book in here as well. So we'll obviously wait on that one for a second, but let's pull out our second book. So this one is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. So we have book 1 and 2, and I'm pretty sure this is the only books in the series. I do think there is like a novella or like a prequel book. I don't remember exactly, but here it is right here. And I probably will wait until I get that book before I start these ones, but I am very, very excited. I think this has to do with vampires, if I remember correctly. Yeah, literally the first sentence in the synopsis starts off with, for humans or vampires, the rules of survival are the same. Never trust, never yield, and always, always guard your heart. And this was a book that was kind of like compared to the Hunger Games, so there is kind of like a competition element involved, and those are always my favorite. So I'm very, very excited for this series. Now let's go ahead and finish off this box with our last book. This is actually a book that I was introduced to by Katie is Reading. She mentioned it in a video a couple of months ago, and it just seemed really intriguing. So I'm very excited to give it a shot. And also the cover is really, really interesting to me. So this one is A Natural History of Dragons, and it says a memoir by Lady Trent, and this is by Marie Brennan. First of all, let's just look at this cover. Is this not like so cool? I don't know if you can really see the details because it's white, but it's basically got like the anatomy of a dragon, and it's got like a bunch of little like lines and numbers, kind of like a sciencey textbook type of situation. And I just find that so intriguing, and it kind of gives me a little kind of like Emily Wilde vibes. So this is essentially a book kind of like, I think, written as a memoir of someone that studies dragons. Here at last, in her own words, is the true story of a pioneering spirit who risked her reputation, her prospects, and her fragile flesh and bone to satisfy her scientific curiosity, of how she sought true love and happiness despite her lamentable eccentricities, and her thrilling expedition to the perilous mountains of Vistrana, where she made the first of many historic discoveries that would change the world forever. I feel like this is going to be one of those books that I either really love or just really don't. So I'm obviously hoping I really love it, but the synopsis honestly does lean very kind of history, science-y versus dragons, you know? So we'll see. And now, last but not least, we have this big old box. I think this was like my very first order for this video, so I've had these sitting around for quite some time, and I'm very excited to finally dig through them. And the very first book that I can see is one that I'm honestly thinking already I might have to return and repurchase somewhere else because there's a specific version of this book that I want, and this is not it. So that is a bummer. This is basically The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renee, and I absolutely love this author. I've read a series from her called I can never remember what it's called. Here it is right here. The Kingdom of Stars and Shadows, something like that. Anyway, I read that series, absolutely ate it up. It was one of my favorite reads from last year. So I was very excited to find out that she was coming out with a new book. And I do love the cover art on this book, but I have seen versions of this paperback where there's a lot of like metallic elements on the cover. And as you can see, this one has 0. I know on the author's actual website, she sells the like metallic versions. So I might have to just like return this and purchase that. I don't know. Now that it's in my hands, I just kind of want to read it and I don't really care as much. Pretty sure I've read the synopsis for this book in a past video, so I'm not going to do it again. But basically this is like a fantasy romance. It's enemies to lovers, so I'm down. All I needed to know were those two things and I was already sold. So there's that book. And then the second book that I have came wrapped up in plastic for whatever reason. This is Half-Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and this is the first book in a series called the Covenant series. And they are being re-released with new covers and sprayed edges. I definitely plan on getting the rest of the books in the Covenant series. I also just talked about this one in a recent video, so I'm not going to go over it again, but I will say this one also is a fantasy romance, and from briefly looking over the synopsis, I think it's got like a forbidden love kind of situation, which is another romance trope that I really like. So very excited about this book. Second to last book for this entire video is the other billionaire romance that I thought was in that other package, but it was in this one. This is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. So another Lauren Asher book, which I've never read a book by her, but I hear really good things. So hopefully I like her as well, because now we have 2 books. But this one is about Julian and Dahlia. There's a sentence that's already like popping out. It says, my childhood rival and family frenemy. If I ever caught on fire, Dahlia would fan the flames with a smile. So when she returns to Lake Wisteria, I fully intend to avoid the interior designer. I'm pretty sure this one's basically about Julian, who hires Dahlia to be his like interior designer, and then obviously there's romance. So there's nothing like crazy intriguing about that synopsis, to be completely honest, but I think it'll be a fun romance regardless, so I'm excited for it. And then our very last book for this entire video is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I originally purchased this series, the first and third book in this series, as hardcovers from the UK, so I got the special like UK editions. And I was too late on getting the second one, and I finally just admitted defeat and have realized I'm never going to get my hands on that second book unless I want to pay like a crazy amount, which I do not want to do. So this one I think was another book that was like on sale for like super cheap. I think it was like $8 or something. So I decided just to kind of finally get it. Actually, I have the other 2 books right behind me. Once Upon a Broken Heart and A Curse for True Love. in these really cool UK editions, and I don't like hate the cover of this one, but these ones are just like so much better. But I just started Caraval a couple of days ago, so I'm gonna be reading these sooner than later, so I needed to get the second book to complete the series. We've finally admitted defeat. We've taken the L. I have my weird mismatched set now. And with that, those are all the books that I have purchased in the last month or so. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you have had the most amazing of days, and I will hopefully see you in my next one. Bye.